Consider This with Carol Schrader is made possible with support from Bass & Associates, First Data Resources, and by Nebraskans for Public Television. Consider This with Carol Schrader, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bale Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome once again to Consider This. It's been a busy year so far, and we're only in the 5th month. Especially busy for Omaha Police. Joining us today is Police Chief Don Carey. Thanks for coming in. I look back on the first few months and I think of jumping bank robberies and methamphetamine labs, and things just keep hopping in the police business no matter what.
Well, they do all over the country, and by the way, it's a pleasure to be here with you today. But certainly in a metropolitan area, in an urban center such as Omaha, we're going to have those type of things happen. Sometimes they're coincidences, sometimes they come in spurts, but it's always unpleasant anytime they do occur.
You know, we just went through the 1-year anniversary of the Columbine shootings, and there was so much talk about that incident and others involving kids in school and guns. We seem to have sort of weathered that. There were some incidents last year, kids bringing things to school or threatening or just making off the hand comments as kids do. And some kids got in trouble, but you know, that was, I look at a year ago, and that was all anyone was talking about.
Sure.
And it seems like Omaha is doing okay.
Well, school violence continues to be a concern for the police department as well as the school system here in Omaha. As I'm sure you're aware, in next year's budget we have 8 more school resource officers, and beginning in 2001, in the very beginning of 2001, we will have a school resource officer in each high school within the corporate limits of Omaha, which we think will add to the security and safety of the students in the school, as well as build rapport between the police and high school students. And that's being very well supported and enthusiastically supported by the 3 school systems involved. In addition, we continue to monitor school safety events, how things are going. Originally, when Columbine happened, it shocked everyone across the nation. It certainly shocked us here in Omaha. There were some reactions within the school system shortly thereafter. That calmed down. We worked very closely with the school administrators, and this year has been fairly uneventful, and we're very pleased with that.
I've been on 3 Omaha campuses where there has been an officer in place. And the most interesting thing is the fact that the students interact with the officer regularly.
Right.
And in the case of Westside, where my son goes, the officer was teaching just like a little mini class on how the courts work, how evidence gathering, just kind of fulfilling an educational role while they're working with the kids. Parking lot situations, Countryside Village across the street, kids going over there. Everybody working together to solve problems.
School resource officers really help us in the department in a number of ways. They actually reduce the amount of calls that we have to schools because the officer's there in the school. The officer's not there as a guard or a security guard. He's there as a liaison between the police department and the student body. And we find in the 3 schools that we currently have school resource officers that they almost become a part of the faculty. Students depend on them, relationships develop, and it becomes a much safer place because students then begin to trust police officers, give them information, share their ideas and thoughts about what's happening on campus, and it just makes the entire thing safer.
Well, and having that police cruiser in the parking lot, first, just to me driving by was a little, because in years past if you saw a cruiser in the parking lot of a school, you knew there was trouble. But now that's turning around where it's sort of a hallmark of safety and security.
Sure. And we hope that continues.
And federal grant helped you enlarge this operation?
Yes, finally. We originally budgeted those 8 positions in one federal grant, which was a COPS Universal hiring grant. We got a better deal with the school resource officer grant. We were then accepted later for the school resource officer grant. We turned one down and took the resource grant, so that financially, it's a better deal for Omaha.
You know the games that people play with regard to tax dollars and how they're spent, whether they're local or federal. And there was talk in the beginning about, this is a shell game and this is still taxpayer money, and there's a little concern about that. That seemed to quiet down, didn't it?
Well, my philosophy is very simple. We send our tax dollars to Washington. Why not get some back, to bring them back to work here in Omaha rather than have them work in New York City or Chicago or someplace else?
They're not going to make major cuts in the federal budget just because Omaha doesn't make a federal grant request.
I doubt it, but the money goes there anyway. And since we're already supporting the federal government, let's get our share. And we've tried to do that.
All right, you've been able to put some officers in the schools, and recently you've enacted a redistricting sort of plan, a reallocation plan of the
Right.
officers. If you've got X number of officers in the school, that's fewer officers, even though they're being paid for by some, by another pocketbook.
Right.
Still officers, sworn officers that are doing something else. You moved folks from the metro unit, commonly called the gang unit, out on the streets, even though they still do some of that intelligence work.
Correct.
How is this working out? And it was the goal to reduce response time. Is it working?
Short answer, yes. And let me explain.
It was a long question, so you can talk
Okay, I
as
can
long
take
as you want.
good. I'll take my time then. We're adding 28 new officers in July of this year. We will begin an academy the 1st of July, add 28 additional officers that are in this year's budget. 8 of those officers are the school resource officers. 20 of those officers are slated for patrol work. So by the end of the year, we will have an additional 20 officers on the street, which will help us tremendously. The whole idea with redistricting and reallocation of resources is to utilize our most expensive resource, which are people. About 92% of the Omaha police budget is personnel costs. That is pretty much standard throughout the nation. 80 to 93% roughly police departments spend on personnel costs. Ours is a people business. So in order to get the most out of our budget and to be as effective and productive as possible, we need to get the most out of those police officers. That equates to have cops where they belong when people need them.
On the streets.
You got it. When you call for the police, we should be able to respond, and respond in a reasonable amount of time. Our goal is to respond within 5 minutes to any emergency call. So far, we're right on the mark. With the new redistricting, we're hitting that 5-minute mark. In addition, we want to make this community even safer. By doing that, the police have to be there when people need them. As we looked at our allocation of resources, we found that we had the fewest number of officers working on the days when we had the most calls for service, which was exactly backwards from the way it should be.
So you got a 4-day, 10-hour
Right.
four-day week, 10-hour workday for some of the officers.
By eliminating in name the metro unit and combining some resources, we were able to put 22 more officers in uniform on the streets. We put together a unit of volunteers with the help of the police union, which was very instrumental in helping us get this together. As we looked at the problem together, we were able to put 20 officers and 4 sergeants into a 10-hour shifting program where they're there the nights that we are the busiest. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that between the hours of 5 at night and 2 in the morning, we're the busiest. And on weekends, we're even more busy because people are off work, they're moving around, they're socializing, they're doing those things that lead to police involvement. Now we have a scheme in place where Thursday night through Sunday night, we have officers, 20 officers citywide working 10-hour shifts. They work through the shift change. We also have officers working afternoon and midnight shift, so that between the hours of 5 at night and 3 in the morning, we have extra officers out there to make calls, to suppress crime, to do crime prevention. In addition, we can get there faster, we can respond so that when the public calls the police, we will be there.
So you've been able to look at the response time numbers, and you have been able to get them down?
We've been able to get the emergency response
Right.
numbers down. We're working diligently to get the non-emergency response numbers down, and that takes a little more time and a little more work.
But the emergencies are, everybody feels like their case is an emergency.
Well, sure.
And so perception is 9/10 of the deal, because you're dealing with your consumers, which are the taxpayers and the people in this city. But the emergency calls are, if you can't get there in a reasonable amount of time in an emergency, then you're never going to.
Oh, that's correct.
about
Our
the other
emergency calls are life or death situations. And if we can get there in less than 5 minutes, we're doing an excellent job, and so far, we're right there.
Well, that's great. Do you have a goal of reducing it even farther?
Oh, we'd like to get it as low as we can.
I mean, do you have a personal goal?
That's so difficult to nail down. 5 minutes
I wasn't going
is
to hold you to
Oh,
it.
I know that. But personally, professionally, 5 minutes is a national average of what's considered a standard. If we can beat that standard, great. If we can even come lower, if we can get to 4 minutes, wonderful. It's fantastic. But it's simply a ratio of time and distance. You have to have police officers available and have to be close to the call. And that means more officers, more cruisers, a lot more investment. At this point, with the investment that we have in the current budget, 5 minutes is a good accomplishment, and we want to keep it right there or below.
The number of sworn officers, how many there should be, is always a budget-sensitive issue, for one thing. I mean, you can only, most of the time, you have the number of officers that you can afford that you think can do the job, the lowest number of officers you can afford that can do the job. Do you have any, what's the number now, or what will it be with this additional troop of officers?
The budgeted number of sworn officers for the year 2000 is 750. That equates to about 2 officers per 1,000. Nationally, that's the average in all cities of all sizes. Of cities 250,000 or higher, of which Omaha, of course, is one,
Might be pretty good.
it averages about 3 per 1,000, so we're on the lower
Oh, on the
end.
low end.
But that's misleading because you have to look at community standards, you have to look at crime rates. Omaha's a pretty safe city. Some sources say it's the 4th safest city of our size in America. I'm not sure what the exact numbers are, and they change all the time.
Who can tell you exactly?
But crimes per capita is what I like to look at, crimes per 1,000, and we're way down in cities of our size and larger throughout the nation. So that would mean probably that we need fewer officers. Last year we had 365,000 calls for service, which meant a police officer had to answer those calls, or they were self-initiated instances that required a police presence. That's about in the low 20 to 30 percentile of cities our size. Pretty much the average is about 10% higher than the population per year.
So do we have, are you comfortable with the number of sworn officers?
I will be comfortable, and I'm not trying to hit your question, but I will be more comfortable when we complete the data studies that we're currently undergoing to make sure we're using our officers in the most effective manner. Before I go before council, before the mayor wants to go to council and ask for more police officers, we want to make sure we need them, that we're using our police officers to the best of their ability and in the most efficient manner, because cops are expensive. We're in a people business. The budget goes up considerably every time we add a police officer, because that means uniformed cruisers, radios, the whole thing that go with it. We have to make very sure that that's the proper investment, and we will do that. If we need them, we'll ask for them.
When you came on the force about 1.5 years ago, it was said by a number of officers that the morale was very low. And in my sense, covering news all these years, is that the morale was low. I don't know how very low it was, or to what degree, but it was kind of low. What did you perceive the morale was? I know you did some internal surveying. What did you perceive it to be when you came, and has it improved at all?
And of course, that's my opinion.
Well, that's
but
why I
I'll
have
share
you
it with
here.
you. I looked at a number of issues when I came to the Omaha Police Department. Morale was certainly one of them. And it mostly circulated around equipment, leadership issues. I've tried to provide strong leadership. I've tried to provide quiet strength, is the way I like to describe it. I think we're moving forward on a number of fronts. I have concern for the community, but I also have concern for police officers. I've been a police officer over 30 years. That's where I'm coming from. We've improved equipment. We've done some things that just make sense. Anytime we're faced with an issue, we look at common sense decisions.
What's one of those kinds of things?
And I'll give you a good example that probably affects morale. We got a request from we have a standing uniform committee of police officers who look at on a regular basis the uniform grooming standards, those type things, because things always change. And one of their suggestions was, every October 15th, we go to long sleeve shirts and either turtlenecks or ties.
Right.
Every April 15th, we go to short sleeve shirts and no ties.
Same with my husband on the fire department.
Right.
They change.
Hey, Chief, can we go to short sleeve shirts anytime we want to wear them? And I made a common sense decision. Of course you can. If you're more comfortable wearing a short sleeve shirt,
And body temperature is different for
there you
different
go.
people.
And you're in a cruiser working midnights and you want to wear your jacket and then have a short sleeve shirt on when you're in the car with the heater on and so forth, as long as you're meeting the grooming standards, why disagree? So that was a common sense decision that I think and I hope showed police officers that we care about their comfort, we care about how they feel, we care about their 8 hours on the job and trying to make them as comfortable as we can. And we continue to try and make those common sense decisions that aren't necessarily ruled by tradition. That's always the way we did it. We try to think ahead.
Well, it is paramilitary in a sense, the way the organization is set
sure.
up. And so those kinds of things there's always been a high priority on, I guess, sort of the exterior look of the crew.
Well, part of professionalization, and this started in the 40s and 50s when throughout the nation police departments went through a metamorphosis of the good old boy system, and the biggest guy in the class got hired as a cop, to the thinking, feeling, sensitive police officer that was hired to deal with problems and problem solving. We have moved towards more rules that make sense as opposed to rules that are just there because they've always been there. And we want to look professional. Anytime a police officer walks into a restaurant or a mall or anything else, we want citizens to know they're an Omaha police officer.
Wear that hat, though.
We don't wear hats. We don't require hats. We want to make sure that those police officers look professional and people recognize them as an Omaha police officer. But short sleeves, long sleeves, they can recognize them either way. The uniform's the same, and we think people will be more comfortable doing that.
You mentioned that we'll get 28 new officers that will go through the police training. The facility that the city is looking at for a future police and fire training academy, there's obviously some trouble finding a location for it. Does that trouble you? How important is a new facility to the department?
A new training facility is paramount. And let me explain what we're dealing with now. We're in a rented facility, which means we have no longevity. We have a landlord that, although I don't think it would happen, at any moment I'm sure could change their mind and we would be homeless. We have a facility that does not meet our needs space-wise. We will begin an academy in July of probably 35 to 40 officers, new candidates, the 28 new positions, plus people who've retired and left the department.
To make up for the retirements.
Right, the openings that we have. We don't have space for those people. They will be jammed into one room. We don't have a workout facility because physical fitness is certainly an important part of a police officer's job. If our officers go to the restrooms, they have to walk past a Montessori school with little kids, and our training involves a lot of scenario training and a lot of real life situations, and we're just next door to little 5- and 6-year-old kids.
Sometimes there's yelling and kinds of things in scenario.
And there's simulated violence and those type of things.
Scare the heck out of the kids.
Well, it scares us sometimes. We know it might scare the kids, and we're concerned about that. So we need a facility that's designed for police training, and we can do that with the bond issue that the citizens passed in November of '98. We can have one of the finest training facilities in the region, and we can turn out a quality product that Omaha's used to and that Omaha deserves.
It's part of the NIMBY syndrome, not in my backyard, that's hit hard on this issue. Do you feel confident that if it were sited in one of these, peripheral neighborhoods where there's a big chunk of land that you can use, and there's neighborhoods, somewhere on the outside, do you feel confident, given everything you know about the plan, that people's lives will not be affected and that their land values will not be affected?
Without a doubt. In fact, their lives will be enhanced. And I know this firsthand. I worked in the Kansas City area for about 4.5 years. Did some training at the Overland Park, Kansas fire training facility with some DEA agents and some federal agencies. Their facility is very similar to what we'll be proposing here in Omaha. If you look at an aerial photograph of that facility and overlay it to the latest facility that we're proposing, it's almost identical. except they have $400,000 homes built on the very perimeter of the training center. Little kids in the neighborhood come to the fence and watch when they're training because they like to see the fire trucks and the other things move. There's an elementary school adjacent to the north end of the property. There are expensive apartments across the interstate. Everything.
And if those people with the big expensive houses are not squawking,
Right.
I mean, they tend to, tends to be the more your property is worth,
Right.
the more louder you squawk.
It's been an asset to that neighborhood, and we feel certain it would be an asset to any neighborhood here. And if we locate it in the Northwest Precinct, in the right area, we're going to add a precinct station, which gives a police presence at all times.
You came kind of in the midst, you came in what, late 98?
August of '98.
Okay. We were still on the heels of the Marvin Ammons case, the man that was shot to death by police officers during that October '97 snowstorm. And you were still there when the city was riding the crest of some ill feelings about that in terms of police relations with North Omaha and the black community. Since then, we've had a civil trial, and the officers have been exonerated again,
Right.
both in the criminal and civil case. How do you think police community relations with the minority groups have fared since you've come?
Well, I think they've improved considerably. When Mayor Dobb hired me, he gave me one mandate: improve community relations, especially minority community relations. And I've worked very hard at that. I took 2 documents home the first night on the job. One was the union contract. It was pretty smart to read that. The second was the Marvin Ammons case file. I read it 2 or 3 times, determined not to make the same mistakes that were made previously.
One of them was the way the information was released.
Certainly, and not to criticize anybody involved in that, but certainly the way it turned out with the facts at hand after reading the case file, there had to have been some mishandling of facts and mishandling of communication. And I knew in police work, I've been doing this too long, that always something goes bad. There'll always be a shooting. There'll always be some sort of crisis. It happened sooner than later. It happened in January, on January 5th of '99, the Charles Jones shooting. We had 2 officers shot in an exchange of gunfire with a suspect who tragically died. But we handled it differently. We immediately gave information to the press as soon as we had it. The press was very cooperative. The next day, as soon as we'd gathered more information, we had a press conference, fielded questions, and kept the public informed minute by minute as to what we discovered as the investigation unfolded. As a result, we think relations have improved because we opened up the process to the public.
Is it a trust factor
I
as
think
much as
so.
anything?
In this particular instance with the Jones shooting, we had a minority female come up to 2 white police officers. Help me, I need help. There's a guy with the gun, my sister's in danger. And they did their duty. They went around the corner, they searched this guy out, they approached him, the guy pulled a gun, shots were exchanged, 2 officers were shot, doing their job in the minority community, helping people. And we got that point across, and I think people understood that. It was tragic. Anytime somebody dies, it's unfortunate, and we're sorry for that. But we have to protect this community, and sometimes there's violence involved. And I think day by day, with an open communication with the minority community, we build more and more confidence.
That helicopter was the source of some disagreement in the community.
I like the way you say it. That helicopter.
That helicopter, which I hear quite often, and doesn't bother me. Bothers my dog, but he's used to it now. Was a source of some consternation in the black community as well as other people. How do you think that's panned out? I mean, it's sort of become a fact of life, I guess.
I think as it's here longer and we show successes that are occurring with the helicopter, it becomes more accepted.
You know, because they talk about buzzing the black community, and there were all kinds of phrases that I think inflamed the issue, whether they were justified or not. But it seemed to be an issue that people felt very strongly about when they were.
Our helicopter, well, first let me say, for a metropolitan area, an urban area, a helicopter is a wonderful police tool. It gives us the ability to see things we can't see from the ground. It gives us the ability, especially in Nebraska, where we have the third-party liability law with police pursuits, to be able to operate pursuits from the helicopter and not have ground units involved, thus making it much safer for the people involved in the chase, as well as innocent citizens who happen to be sharing the roadway. But that aside, helicopters do not buzz anyone unless they're on a job, and let me explain that. We cruise at 5,000 feet or higher when we're on patrol. We have magnification and video cameras that we can watch the ground with infrared lenses, with night scopes, and see everything we need to see from 5,000 feet. That way the noise is not a factor. The only time you can hear the helicopter is when it's on a call or when it's responding to something where police officers or citizens need help, so we can get low enough that the light then becomes effective, that they can illuminate an area so that the cruiser cars responding have an assistance. So
A lot of foot pursuits particularly.
right. Anytime you hear the helicopter noise, it's because they're on a job and they're not just watching things, they're actually operating in a police mode.
Do you feel, and I don't know if you've looked at these numbers, but your gut feeling, do you think that we've lowered the number of police pursuits, or at least the distance of police pursuits, because of the helicopter?
Oh, we've looked at the numbers. We watched them very carefully because
someone will ask.
those settlements come out of our budget, and we have to be, and it's taxpayers' dollars, and we hope we're good guardians of those dollars. Pursuits have decreased so far this year, over 99. The crashes involved have decreased. The number taken over by the helicopter has increased because we recently increased the availability of the helicopters to 20 hours a day so that they can be there just about any time we need them. That was another thing we cooperated with the union. They helped us to expand the hours. And so we're continuing to whittle down that liability so that we make this community not only safer for the people on the roads, but make it more cost effective.
Just got a minute or so left. If in the next year that you're police chief, what do you feel most strongly about in terms of improving for public safety?
Gosh, there's so many things.
I
you
know,
want to
it's
improve.
hard. Or just a short laundry list of your gut strongest feelings.
I want to improve the confidence that the public has in their police force. The biggest asset in the Omaha Police Department, and I've been all over this country looking at police departments, is the character and the quality of the men and women that serve here. I want the public to understand that and to really throw in with us and get behind us and help us make this, in a partnership, a safer community and a better place to live.
What one thing will increase that partnership, if you could do one thing tomorrow?
Let us understand each other and eliminate that we versus them attitude that sometimes occurs between citizens and police and citizens.
Do you think getting more officers into the community and on the streets will help that?
The more familiar we become with the public, the more we'll be accepted, surely.
I want to thank you, Chief
My
Carey.
pleasure.
By the way, they have a terrific website. Omaha
It's pretty
Police
cool.
Department does. A lot of fine officers maintaining different parts of it. Just wanted to mention it.
It looks good.
It's easy to find. Thanks a lot, Chief, for
You're
being with
very
us. And
welcome.
thank you for joining us today on Consider This.
It went well.
Consider This with Carol Schrader is made possible with support from Bass & Associates and First Data Resources.